Okay. Yeah. This is a difficult thing because you're judging, but if someone's not judging, would you? I haven't eaten today.
Yes.
So if you could figure that out.
I think I'll order something for you.
Okay.
Such a good part, Rob. Thanks.
Oh my god, you guys are judging against each other? That's crazy.
What are you up to now? Are you coaching? Or?
I am applying for med school and working in a lab in Boston. But also I'm here.
Wing.
And you
Steak paper.
I have paper.
You have more paper? Like normal?
Are you asking for paper?
Can I have paper?
Yeah, we have none either. Well, we have short.
We have like
computer
short printer paper, but
Yes, legal pads.
Yeah, I guess I'll take a little pad. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. We have 1 minute. I'm gonna run next one. I'll be back. I guess some of our arguments are short. Like some are.
You at Harvard have to be, yes, you know.
And Glenn wants to do it.
some other arguments for sure.
I'm gonna cut the body for email. This one goes up to Jeff. You could actually do button and then the heart emoji.
Oh, I thought you meant horn. And I was
Georgetown
like, are you gonna
VP.
apply
Oh,
that
did you get big
stupid
paper?
fucking
Yeah. Can I
legal
have one?
principles
I don't want
in
the
space
little-
together?
Uh,
You know what I'm talking about?
We didn't want to give it to you anyway.
Thank
You
you.
remember the soft left app against like on healthcare and then again last year I'm talking about?
It's a damn specimen.
The fuck yeah. I was like, it's Dartmouth deep, like.
I just let me see.
Cool.
Before that thing didn't work on too.
Alright, my channel's been, shitty this little bit. I got the thing they sent, but not the thing you sent.
It'll when you get together, it's not okay.
Alright, okay.
No, I'm still downloading it. Alright, yeah. Good night.
Alright. Are you sure?
Contention 1, debris. New space constellation deployments explode debris growth and overload conjunction warning systems. Bullhub 618. New space 2 back into space. Company close to launch constellation. Commodus place in 20,000 satellites in orbit in the next 10 years. Fewer than 8,100 in place in orbit in history. Massive orbit increase in long-term debris. Longer correlated mass. Traffic curve half cells more than 6 times the number of currently active satellites. More than 6 current active satellites. Operating tanks with sharp increase warning still will increase. If a large constellation deployed is expands conjunction with close proximity. Current tracking may produce millions of warnings and half a dozen collisions. Operators need to store 3 numbers hastily find the videos of warnings to drastically define using more accurate information. Opposite insertion to inspire spirals of attitude and create numerous opportunities for conjunction assessment. Conjunction overload makes SSA inactionable and collisions unavoidable. Dickinson, Sampson, 18, SSA become a big problem. The tremendous child falls plus how you separate the wheat from the chaff. When operators get what is that like to take this seriously. If you don't actually have the data transparency, the data comes from very difficult to make operational decisions. Operators and actual information make proper assessments. SSA unverifiable spills over to undermined space norms. Tanaka 17. A space actor growth building SSA should be the most important step of the future. Without having collision warning space would be handled by collision developing. Rules will deploy this no means verification. 20% of satellites launched by not above the ADC mitigation guidelines. We should be able to accurately identify this not above the national rules of discussion actually. As the information credibility becomes vital, the collisions increase. Norms prevent collisions. Alberta 12. Expanding the data we share with fosters technical space environment. Space seems to be the goal to utilize our interest. The U.S. can minimize the chance to reduce the interference, extermination of the use of crowded orbits, and the discouraging stability behavior. Rules also find a way to hold account those who engage with Line X. Space recalls Russian war. Lewis 2004. Russian Georgia's left for the first use. I've been over that Moscow might use nukes preemptively. What would happen if you were to hit a Russian early when he said Russia would have to make a judgment call. U.S. will maintain the largest team to do a restructure and attack. It is any military nature and crash to interpret defense of the worst case line. When information flows charged by the attack or accident, the result of panic or escalation. Debris destroys critical space infrastructure. Georgescu 19. Likely to collision increasing into 30 pounds, 30 centimeters currently cataloged. And impact on the ambulance object because no full on satellite disruption without American SA. Many nations see subject to collision during the cascading chain. GPS disruption causes financial crisis. Georgescu 19. It's possible the crisis occurred by the base of real economy with only financial dimension. Financial affairs become connected, allowing investment to market also becomes source fragility. Becomes quite dangerous as any disruption in the critical space infrastructure which financial sector depends. Having the global nature of communication silence very important. Hyperspace trade openings is less than millisecond. Financial sector shows critical dependence communication capabilities. GPS is used to record exactly the collision transaction. Major breaks you can atomic clocks in place to synchronize operational activities. The flash crash of the city can make its daily loss in history 1,000 points. And every time you create as much chaos and cascading disruption causes losses highly recoverable. Economic decline triggers global security crisis. Man 14. Somalia 2 down. The Soviet Union collapse of the financial burden. Conflict with nuclear war has fully got Arab Spring about economic conditions. Economic guarantees erodes confidence. U.S. security guarantees including greater regional arms bill. Case studies Pakistan or Syria North Korea support with declining economic conditions promote proliferation by reducing capabilities safeguarding to stop house financial conditions result in reduced security to weapons making facilities putting mature risk for theft or transfer. The plan solves data siloing, enabling data infusion. Rebuttal 16. There's reason for improving data exchange, integration, management, and processing. The approach to neutral international organized facility collection and sharing of data information. Russia better solves limitation on orbital management. Marketable accuracy or accessible information. No unified mechanism including information false alarms. The fact that there's no common database guarantees duplication, different processing information on surveys, and assortment of the data quality issues with actors in the space arena much vacuum. U.S.-Russia data fusion makes information actionable. Dickinson and Sampson 18. It is really better bringing all the data source data together, fusing together. We have the capability of finding far more actionable, timely information and operating. You need days ahead of notice to move in time to go even more so than we have making constellation. Couple making constellation increase probability collision over 50%. The Russians have an excellent SSA network is ready. We can access that. National security restrictions make SSA information unactionable. Scott Ball and Dickinson 18. If you have multiple sit out there collecting data, aggregate them together, you can validate and include the truth. If you aggregate the data together, we can provide security reasonable information that is good. You can fix some trust because no one can transparency is absolutely key. We're very legitimate national security system when it comes to some restriction in terms of transparency. For the purpose of SSA information, highly important. You need to how do you need improvement. Transparency while actionable SSA information decision on the floor. Accessing Russian SSA data overcomes gaps in the American SSA catalog. Whedon 17. The US catalog and their gaps in this coverage. SSA historically has no coverage in Asia. The flow to the eccentric band called JSPOC, which is used for perform analysis for safety service include AC warning as part of the SSA sharing program. Russia operates a large catalog which maintains complete catalog of Russian space surveillance as well as ISO is a partnership with the institution working with the Russian ISO consists of 9 telescopes. ISO can track wide range object sizes and provide a significant amount of observations. Contention 2. Russia. Space dominance causes Russian counter space preemption. Johnson 317. Russia gives 2 German object level 3 space capabilities highlight Russia's military doctrine being external threats to Russia. The global strike intend to save weapons in space and nuclear precision weapons. Russia feels compelled to be able to respond. Information strike is strike team with goal disrupting enemy troop command and control. These weapons goals require Russia to maintain its access to space missile defense right forward. The Russian naval island space the US Russian satellites over track targets especially the Russia offensive and preemption. The traditional military doctrine Russian offensive satellites which are able to rapidly replace Russian counter space preemption causes global nuclear war. Changing perceptions of US Russian space conflict is key. Rebuttals 17. Russian experts are engaged effort to fight an all space war. The main theoretician Colonel Uranitsky organized US action US airspace power should be countered with organizations by the Russian space defense forces. Russia needs to counter their attack system with the ancient satellites forces. Calls are being translated into policy. Space work is the military opportunity to press leadership with fighting thrust. Justifying arms for carrying polling Russian leaders. Depicted centers conflicts one through non-nuclear arms. Conflict without equivalent against nuclear states. The basic premise US like against Iraq and maybe people against Russia. Sugan Muslim order represent defense industry argues that Russia's strategic logic because the limitation of Russian ability to defend against airspace like Russia may be a resort to limited use of nuclear weapons. This to compel the US into back into this logic is widely accepted. The fact that a major wars we've seen in the contemporary Russian strategic thinking is employing a different evolving integrated human nuclear non-nuclear operation creates breeding ground for rapid escalation of the global nuclear war. Entanglement and confidence building aligned US-Russia space interests. Roseberry 15. The reduce the strategic dilemmas the nation must alter perceptions and encouraged by nation in cooperation space situation data sharing information reduce uncertainties associated with military activity space and reduce the perceptibility to security dilemma opening operations centers with Russia needs to occur. This will stop deterrence by entanglement and line. The adversary's interest US interest is maybe stronger than enhancing deterrence, but the actions will reduce the security delay faced by some nations by effectively sharing information and intentions and capabilities. Confidence building through SSA solves space war. Tanaka 17. SSAs and TCBM reproduce the misperception and mistrusting calculation, the reducing the chance of armed conflict in space by closely monitoring space activity, sharing your information to help additional proactive action. Russia says the information sharing this TCBM will play increasing roles in networks expand throughout the world. Russia says yes, and the plan is a strong TCBM. Rebuttal 16 establishing a centralized national database in the area of poverty. The collection of future multiple sources should not be neglected. Given that databases are solid, others have spotted view of objects, the result of using data should be generate more complete understanding of the situation over the Russian Federation proposed international information platform international database. The database should cover all information categories, including the guidelines of the long-term sustainability in outer space. The proposal describes a platform, a single international database, a single database, and the platform to increase expansion, competence, motivation, opportunity exists. Russia currently gets conjunction assessments from the U.S. unilateral catalog. Chow 11, JSPOC in his daily CS screenings, all operational status. Russia were notified 252 times and 147 times in 2010. What is the number of gross sharing partnership program? Contention 3 proliferation. ASAT tech is proliferating now. Evanov 727. Dominance eroded, therefore lactose increased. Space-faring powers, including ASAT Julius orbiters capable of RPS technologies, as well as alternate deterrence. Recent years have witnessed the burgeoning democratization of the public cause physical attacks, very needs of attribution, proliferating counterspace, high potential adversaries, disrupt American networks, counterspace capabilities, running intentional accidental conflict escalation. Rogue nations will strike first. Harrison et al. 17 space capabilities begin to spread to other countries. 39% of launches innovation other than the US and Russia. Innovation is ultimately to disrupt the change the way space is used. The availability of space capabilities and the commercial market bringing advantage of space within the reach of rogue nations and non-state actors. US military silence more attractive adversaries attack. The first World War, less than 8% of the munitions were used for precision guided. In 2014, when 96% of the munitions were precision guided. Nations have developed counterspace capabilities to limit the advantage of space power within the US. For the US, China, and Russia. Adversaries will attempt to disrupt these systems. Adversaries can fight back. Constellation intended for nuclear missions are now being used for conventional warfighting. Deterrence space may no longer be valid. Attacks will be masked as natural events due to the lack of SSA-based attribution. Borowitz 19 enhanced SSA improves attribution techniques to be able to reduce the vulnerability of spacecraft. The spacecraft can interfere with signals from satellites. There are 20,000 obstacles on destruction of spacecraft. The natural satellite destruction can be caused by natural phenomena can be used to mask purposeful attack. SSA's primary tool is to attribute purposeful destruction or predicted avoid accidental collision exchange between the two. Space work as nuclear. Johnson Free 17 space warfare risk nuclear warfare. The US can threaten attack not just space houses, but also ground bases, including SA command control system and centers and other actions. When much heavier in the US lost space hardware, and they climb the escalatory ladder more damage with the both sides will want to avoid things can escalate pretty quickly. Nation may have to decide preemptively on strike communication styles, slow in its ability to move. This is all played out in real crisis simulation and is something similar to played on US Air Force war games. The nuclear fabric will certainly cause escalation inevitable in an adversary's interest to launch a preemptive nuclear strike. Improved SSA helps distinguish natural events from attacks, preventing covert aggression. Morgan 10. Poor SSA undermines the credibility of punishment. The attacker may have a chance of striking not only lack of SSA can inhibit the US from taking reprisals against covert aggression creators. The New York may be taking a response to natural satellite failure. But with better SSA, improved diagnostic capabilities, helping operators distinguish satellite malfunction attacks, enhancing first striking stability in space. The plan's new catalog reveals position and trajectory. Gretchen Bacher et al. 2012. It can be run as code catalog only open to the organization itself, which will then use the information on conjunction assess for the position trajectory of objects are then announced internationally. One of the objects involved in the potential inclusion is sensitive operators can undertake real affiliation with the object. Russian cooperation is key to overcome geographical limitations. We intend the US and Russia have by far the most capable database global SSA since there can be a feature analysis combination of very sensitive architecture for sharing SSA observation. These need to be combined. These mathematical points can do feedback as observers required to maintain accurate catalog. And this is called catalog maintenance. They want to build a network of location of geographical locations owned by the state. Operations of geographically remote sites require complicated logistics characterizing space, whether it's a relative new field. Successful requires instruments in place where they can model the sun. The requirements geographically distributed sensor networks for effective SSA lead to strongly inclusion and international data sharing is required. Combining data from existing sets can alleviate the need for the building of two-way data sharing provides both parties with a complete data set. Lack of attribution causes first strike. Harrison et al. 17 attributes do not be assumed to increase the number of actions needed. Increase when adversary military planners get restored, so they have to be sure the US can be sure that the aggressor to respond effectively. Leaders will have to demonstrate their ability to attribute attacks led an aggressor believe that they can avoid retaliation by relying on ambiguity. Plan. The United States government should propose to Russia the reciprocal sharing of at least nearly all space situational awareness information, including the long-term sustainability guidelines of outer space activities with a new neutral international organization that hosts a centralized database of space situational awareness information that undertakes conjunction assessments with the catalog open only to the organization itself. Space dominance can never solve. It makes first strike inevitable. Johnson 317. Space dominance is danger. We lost the US when it wants space while dying on this action. We lack the main force willing to concentrate action. They consent those are willing collaborators. We spoke gladly care and imaginariously. Control space can be traced to the research documents emanating from the Air Force. Given the dual nature of space technology, the distance that comes with determining accountability for action in space, the potential for error-related activities of this significance. Counter space provides the preemption. The attack. Those actions may well be with a high potential for miscalculation. The US has to get best energy entanglement. None of the positive effects global decision been argued. Ignore the most solid country has a risk. The less likely to put them at risk. The important signal cannot be overstated. Expressing intention to dominate space is nothing. Rather, give the first advantage to enemies after potential adversaries and provides motive for the preemptive employment. Preemptive employment.
Good.
Yeah.
Who can contribute to the database that the plan establishes?
US and Russia.
US and Russia. Which rogue state will field an ASAT?
Evanoff identifies a proliferation to a number of actors.
Which ones?
North Korea as well as Iran and
Where does the card talk about them having that capability?
Well, it says the technology is proliferating, and the line that you should look at is orbiters capable technologies alter deterrence. Recent states witness burgeoning democratization as plummeting costs occur.
Okay, but like, why does that say that that's possible for Iran and North Korea?
The democratization idea is that because technology is easier to access, there's a number.
But those states specifically, does it mention those, or is that kind of your argument?
Well, it's not it's his argument.
Well, but not really, because it's not about those
The
countries.
first paragraph talks about India. The second paragraph
So
is
India
discussing
already
Iran
launched an
being
ASAT,
attacked.
though. Like,
That's our point. That's
it's
the
like,
that's
are
an
you
example of
gonna,
the democratization we're talking about.
and then you've kind of said that it's about Iran and North Korea.
I don't know how else you can interpret a card that is discussing
Well,
rogue actors attacking the United States other than
That's the
adversaries
only way
such
to
as Iran and
interpret.
North
Okay,
Korea.
okay, sure. So that I want to know how that escalates to a space war. What incentive would the U.S. have to respond to a single rogue actor attack with like all-out assault?
Well, the Harrison Evidence describes an attack on a communication satellite. We have impacted on the first advantage, but on this example, we talk about how the United States might retaliate and perceive it as an adversarial aggression, launching.
Yeah, so they would obviously perceive it as aggressive, but North Korea or Iran hitting one satellite, how would that escalate to the full ASAT conflict that Johnson Freeze?
So Johnson Freeze says verbatim that this could climb the escalatory ladder to a more damaging war size.
But it's but an escalatory ladder. Why would there be an escalatory ladder with Iran and North Korea? They don't have the ability to like meet those escalation steps.
We don't have a proportional response because we are asymmetrical.
Okay, so the space war would I'm assuming involve striking their space assets.
The point is they don't have a lot of them, so they're going to
they don't have
developing counter space capabilities.
No, but that's the important part. So if they don't have a lot of space assets, what do we attack in the space war?
They're terrestrial assets. That's the point.
Okay. How does that escalate?
Because we've now attacked Iran, North Korea, China, etc. It makes it incredibly easy for that to move from space to the terrestrial nuclear Rubicon.
So the Lewis card, what would Russia do in response to debris? What's the escalatory step they would take? Hitting an early warning satellite.
So they perceive it as being an affront on their economy as well as their infrastructure. Our evidence outlines strategic doctrine.
We're sanctioning their economy. Why doesn't that perceive as an affront on their economy?
We cited Colonel Krenitsky, who is a main theoretician of Russian space policy, and says that because this is a domain of warfighting, they perceive it.
So what step would they take after that?
Well, so just to lay out the chain of events that occur, say that one of the sides were attacked, they'd perceive it as United States aggression, and
then
they'd perceive it as another war. They'd be likely to first strike the United States.
Oh, okay. So Russia would satellite would get hit. What card says that they would first strike the United States?
Well, so I also give the example of escalating proxy conflicts.
No. I want to know the first strike one first. What's the card?
Arbitrage. Ivanov reiterated Moscow might use nukes preemptively. What would happen if debris were to hit a Russian early warning?
Okay, but that's like two giant, that's like pages apart in an article. You've just highlighted them together.
You're just lying, and we've cited Russian
whatever,
and quotes from Russian authors.
Great. Second part.
Yeah. 942.
Alright, it's let me know when we're good for an order. It's one off and then the case and the order of the wins.
Alright. So Russia, or debris Russia against
Pro.
Debris
Rush Proliferation for those names.
Yeah.
Alright.
This one's
Oh, I got it downloading.
Yeah, sorry, I need to still come up with something.
We're good? Yeah. Great. The absent description of the nation state is singular, autonomous, and discrete mass hierarchy is one of the ruling class that uses centralized power to spread imperialism, but also formats hostility between nations rather than political leaders. It means 19 people like our countries as though they were people who speak about the US, China, Russia, singular entities who talk. We do it when talking about IR, we use language that implies agency. We speak about business and action, Germany, invading Poland, America, pursuing a policy towards around the language of shapes our understanding of the world language and grammar real systems referring to countries as singular entities that decide how those assumptions built in to language terms like America, Russia, and shorthand to avoid more accurate expressions. One of the most damaging aspects of the way we speak about IR is the way at least we can play countries with the government that leads hostility to entire population rather than people then power, the normal way of speaking of your questions who are the people in power. How did they get it? Why did they do what they did? Why do others obey within each political community or ruling group? How do they have to use the course IR and relations between ruling groups IR and relations between ruling groups? Frequently interests of ruling groups are at odds with the actual interests of the political community. Imperialism of the classic example are parts to not serve the interests of the majority but bring huge benefits to the ruling group. On solution with people's diplomacy to strengthen personal relations between people from different political communities. They these kinds of foreign relations between ruling groups, legal regimes that rely on Westphalian nationalism don't work in space, tech development, privatization, unclear divisions of territory, demand new approaches to IR that decenter national sovereignty. sovereignty and nationalism. Conversely, space is the ideal starting point for displacing sovereignty norms and shifting legal paradigms on Earth. That solves global peace. May be 11 current high laws rather than analyze the traditional national sovereignty. We should acknowledge that this is a new venture that needs its own legal regime and alternative system in which national sovereignty is not the core norm, has potential for promoting unity and an alternative to our own Western sovereign nation states. No trouble world divided among countries is not the only nor the best guideline for establishing a space regime. Space is an opportunity to establish new realities, legal regimes that understand sovereignty. It is around the possibility of a gradual shift away from nationalism towards supranational solutions. Tech has progressed rapidly. Lawyers and politics have opportunity to create a novel body of law in advanced space. Or Westphalian model will be outdated with the fundamental principle of non-appropriation space. May provide a model promoting global peace, beginning analysis of fire with the nation state produces everyday nationalism that is continually reinforced through ritual practices like debate that cognitively and affectively take for granted the legitimacy of the nation state that causes violent social exclusion. Minkowski, 15. Researchers have been preoccupied with nationalism that have been most disruptive and controversial studies turned everyday nationalism. The primary nation is the unit of political governance that usually reinforced through routine cognitive and affective orientation that are products of institutional ritual practices. The rise of the nation there was accompanied by protecting opposite institutionalized domination, radical nationalist movements, mobilized dominant groups, resistance to the nation, symbolic boundaries, efforts that are motivated by racial, ethnically, religiously, essentialist conceptions of the nation that explicitly exclude entire categories of people. Nationalism is not limited to periods of crisis. Nationalism is effects in settled times. Its impact is more subtle. The analytical lens much priceless and political ideologies suggest that understand the nation's symbolic significance and take for granted legitimacy of the nation state for meanings attributed to the nation affect people's self-understanding and overarching political culture work highlighted inherent tendency nationalism towards the religion. Nationalism predicated on fundamental belief in new characteristics of each nation and inevitably draws out social branches around national communities. Nationalism causes great power war and prevents solving 21st century existential threats. Debates over alternatives to the nation state now are key to a sustainable transition. Clements, 19. Nationalist dynamics are reinvigorate state dominant power policy reminiscent of those that fuel globalization, sustainable development, peace building, and institutions capable of addressing major problems. It is vital to have debates about whether liberal democratic capitalist states under rule of law are capable of meeting economic and identity needs. Citizens is not very urgent conversation are needed about what might replace them. The left needs to focus on what international order wishes to advance. If it does not, the existing order will unravel and nationalists do about major existential challenges. Human survival in the 21st century have no solution to pollution, control, cyberspace, climate change, transnational pandemics, and deeply interconnected world status. Our theories support and subsume local through state building interventions and use technocratic procedures to construct peace around the nation state. The alternative is a relocalization of international politics that decouples national level politics and political movements for cooperation. Nitty 15. Third ascendancy of dominant perspectives in the social sciences. Social science rests on generalization. The nation state is the principal level of analysis. States become key players in the peace formation. Liberal peacemaking becomes stable across Liberia, Sierra Leone, El Salvador, Timor-Leste. This reified the state as the principal unit of the state as the central pillar around which peace should be constructed. Intolerance of statelessness was reinforced by 9/11 association of statelessness with terrorism and disorder. This and flattening the local securitization modernity sideline the local. They reinforce hatred international norms. Alienating the local keeper and broker have been awarded to state that starting point is to decouple the local from the global. They can to conceive of setting natural parts of human agencies outside the state that domains that may be tempting to dismiss agency as the domestic soft or marginal to the real politics of the state, but this agency can be significant and capable of operating transnational political economy, spreading ideas and mobilizing movements under the radar. Politics deserves to be treated seriously and as right not as a mere adjunct to somehow more important state war and peace and pose a forceful compartmentalization of social religious society or to warn through national emergencies and into thinking about conflicts through spatial lenses. Principal lens has been the nation state. The locals who drive the national and the war and peace narratives. Entire areas are securitized like the Middle East localities are axiomatically associated with the conflict. Everyday peace relies on people who see beyond negative imagery, imaginaries, and can't see their own in the terms of opportunities and alternatives. However, like these may occur in marginal spaces. The nation system is unsustainable, but deliberate attempts to revive the order caused by the nationalist, masculine, military conflicts of modern political authority runs on empty. That is also the root cause of their impacts and is the means by which at least dismiss the possibility for alternative futures. Discouped. The UK shows 2 sense of recovery after Brexit. France has done little to accelerated despotism in the political system in Spain, rule of law, democratic system, our economy are down in Germany, neo-fascists are prepared to take their roles in official position on bullshit. The national politics are not confined to the West. The most momentous development of ours is the winning of the nation its ability to withstand 21st century forces and loss of influence. Since we do not know any other, it feels like the end of the world apocalyptic nationalism and vote nation states are in world decay. 20th century structure are drowning in 21st century deregulated finance, autonomous tech, religion, militancy, great power, rivalry, the nation system of pure unable to offer viable future. They watch financial elites escaping national intelligence. Even if we wanted to restore what we had, that moment is gone. Economics and information have grown beyond the authority of the national government. The distribution of wealth is uncontested in any political mechanism. It will be objected to any alternative utopia attack of the last 2 decades. It's impossible. There are good reason to be suspicious of authorities who tell us human beings are capable of similar range. There have been many moments when politics suddenly expanded, including the creation of the nation. The real illusion is to believe things can carry on. Western governments are desperate to prove they are still in control. The time Trump's personality, Trump's office can never have the mastery of American life. Kennedy is obliged to make it. He can ideal social division, but he controls the security apparatus, which can help him look after, going to war, time to warning borders, hardening borders, he can hand out with a logical currency like food, no war, one shop, baby, citizen, ship with much power, showing into holding it right is, yes, there's citizens who have nothing are persuaded, they have a law, this strategy cannot be blamed on a few bad acts, political authorities running on empty lips, unable to deliver material change, they arouse hatred or euphoria, military exploits, the legitimate international orders quickly, thus there's no remaining illusion, all that remains is Russia's excavating Ukraine, German states, there are a few consequent times where you serve have one lies over there, instead of foreign security will be revealed to the U.S. further declines, and it can no longer do anything to control the chaos it helped create, the first advantage. Doesn't solve collisions, I'll trogate 19 operators already told to address all possible conditions of 4% of currently draft top of operators are truly comprehensive. The OD and daily conduct maneuver funding out of fuel inconsistency you for memories, Berkeley destination support collisions probability is higher than 1/10 of the negative 4th operators here. Being trained by orbit determination programs to prevent extraction of covariance data. No one's going to war over satellite bones 18 space is an afterthought of grand strategic views and top level decision makers. The president may not care once that may be lost. It may cause bitter area, but pressure conflict matter more than medium matter by perceiving consequence of losing his stats out of proportion to actual strategic effect for sessions. No cost war law 19. Working according to repent to rise session recovery zone. Listen to resume roads according to any particular stage of challenges exists in all stages of the cycle system which war depends on consideration of gain loss of wars, economic origin of wars, downward pressure that makes this term prosperity. People are also worried about recession. Man is the conclusion of a dissertation, doesn't say extinction and isn't citing any one advantage. 2. Rising expectations turn the case Melchinia. 18. The root conflict between Washington and Moscow, less and less perception of fundamental no social leadership inherited the U.S. perceived global leadership is an integral part of national identity. That Russia cannot escape it and would dictate each time Russian expectations for equal partnerships is not satisfied under my source and serves additional evidence for Russia's anxiety. The U.S. prefers unilateral measures setting global problems and ASAP's obviously thumb. And Arbatov says you need to do an arms control agreement. Russia would say no. Harris 14, the code goes of our limited space superiority. Observation calls for custom to refrain destruction of objects to provide notification for maneuver and offer transparency. Space offices may prove difficult to reconcile with security limits and transparency require release of national security proprietary info. There's naive to assume states such as the U.S. and Canada release info does not realistic. States seek all means of security, including space. Russia would cheat long back in 17. Russia's main strides for destroying U.S. assets is using foreign policy to hobble U.S. space weapons. Russia advocated preventing weapons in space and enforcing against space for assets. Russia is fully aware that there are no capabilities to verify the U.S. will comply. Russia do not have the same constitutional political constraints as the U.S. to restrain Russia's sarcasm. Russians are accustomed to violating arms control. There's no reason to expect Russia to rate how would have ignored arms control by doing this. It has gained advantages for decades. No Russia war trend in 18. Fears of World War III overblown. NATO seen from Moscow because they were live transfers haven't changed that. There have been deployments, higher mobility. Allies all agree spending we do out. There's no interest in attacking Baltic states. The Baltic main concern is domestic North Dakota domestic advantage. 3. Space Force High Council 316. We've seen history over war and taste for the military and the rest of the muddy debate over the slim possibility of war in space. No country has weaponized space shot transactions are not synchronized with GPS missiles. Their cars without GPS. I use German Alliance that U.S. have capabilities to maneuver making hard against the EMP support. Sport judges to protect from flows of laser frequency operators is jamming. No adversary has capabilities, nor will they ever. There's too much redundancy. The rogue ASATs impact is a joke. There's no way Iran is getting an ASAT. We'd strike them regardless if we thought we even had an excuse, but no said state thinks they would get away with it now. Indian ASATs obviously thumb because they're responding to other threats, not the U.S. and Russia, like China, Mad Czechs, Bowen, 18, ubiquitous space infrastructure, fragility, space rate, existential deterrence, space, use of military forces, disruption may be counterintuitively escalatory. There may be natural conflicts against us all space capabilities because of consequences approaching the response to problems, space bring me explosive events can render the region orbit unusable. This would caution a country like China for manners, ambitions that cause its own military and economy to align China's ASAT test is a lesson for all.
Oh, that's Bowen?
Yeah.
Lesson for all.
Yep. Lesson for all.
Oh, okay.
Ready?
Yep.
In case you read a card that says no Russian war because of NATO, how did you not just read a diss out of your alternative? NATO is an interstate formation that your card says is necessary to prevent global nuclear war.
So our alternative doesn't abolish all of the nation states, but we've read a bunch of arguments on case that assume a theory of IR consistent with the act. Our point is that even in a world where you win the theory of IR,
are literally just nation state bad. Use nation there.
That's not true. We've in fact turned your theory of international relations. Some of our case arguments will probably be in tension with that. Our point is that even when you turn the theory you forwarded on yourself,
so
the app is still incompatible with that.
So I just want you've said the alternative allows NATO. You've said that is correct. Okay. Alternative.
Our point is that it's unstable. It's unsustainable.
I understand. We'll get there later. The card that you read for the alternative says that, or the second card says it needs its own legal regime in outer space. Can you describe what this legal regime is?
I'm gonna let Miles field that one.
Wait, what was the
legal regime in outer
space? Your card says it needs a new legal regime in space. What is that legal regime?
So that card critiques the existing form of legal regimes as encoding
what is the new legal
responsibilities for nation states. The alternative card says that they should instead be based on local movements, and that individually, like whenever, whether we're considering like debris propagation in the first advantage, that would be regulated by, local movements that are close to the corporations or the, companies that propagate that debris.
Is it your position that NATO is formatted by local movements?
What?
You've already said
that. You said this.
Okay, so it's clearly fine.
It's unsustainable and
so
collapsing
clearly
out,
fine.
for
Okay, I understand. But you're saying it's clearly fine to have interstate formations, the exchange of data, nuclear, things that are based on realist assessments. My question is then, why is there no permutation that can resolve it? It's possible to have formations like NATO.
Well, one, the alt doesn't fiat NATO away. That's what Nate was saying. More importantly, though, like the existence of NATO and the study of it as a center node of international relations based on nation states.
What is your alternative conception of how IR is or operates?
As a kind of fluid connection of a bunch of individuals, local entities that act upon things like governments or act upon, it treats nation states as acted upon rather than actors.
Yeah,
in the
the plan
international
establishes a
relations model.
transnational organization that says this data is of global public good and belongs to everybody. It is fundamentally transnational cosmopolitan.
That is
Why
an
is this not
absolute lie and a gross
Why?
mischaracterization
Why?
of the money. See, it's not a transnational organization. You have Trump propose a deal to Putin. It's also not accessible to everyone. It's only the
We said
United
let's go
States and
follow
Russia.
on. You didn't ask any questions about the plan of the one.
No, we did. We clarified there was only the United States and Russia. They're the only ones who contribute. They're the only ones who get access to it.
So
that was all established. You have not read a
The thrust
follow-on
of your
part.
internal link is that the use of the nation state devolves into something like populism. Okay, the closest internal link
In
is
fact,
bond-
the study of international relations with the nation state is the node for that. It's not the state.
Can the nation state be used productively in a way that does not reify essentialism?
Not
to use
in a
language
relevant,
of
applicable way for the study of international relations in the 21st century.
Why is that the case?
Because we've read a whole bunch of cards that the nature of modern dynamics exceed the political capacity of nation states, and they're no longer relevant agents in a world of things like extreme financialization.
Sorry. Is the alternative conditional?
Yeah.
Wait, is that yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So degree advantage, Russia war advantage, proliferation advantage.
Is that the longest order?
Yes. Sorry, still downloading it.
Alright, you good?
Yep.
Probability of a collision is high now because of privatization and their card sites overload, which the plan solves too. They've conceded that the plan results in norms development, which independently solves debris collisions. Yes, war. There are evidence cites the Russian defense minister that proves it's likely. Their impact defense to the economy is about diversionary war, not alliances, which sustains the liberal order and prevents collapse. Our man evidence is qualified because he's a general in the military. The Russia advantage. Rising expectations is 19. We do a ton of cooperation with Russia all the time now. Buyers 19. The eye says the function NASA book 17 on the Soyuz that the Russian engine to take U.S. intelligence assassin Congress are 18 RD 180 engines last enough 2022. Russia and the U.S. share enough info and space to agree with the space station system on NASA and Roscosmos to join statement in pursuit of this Russian similarly working in Western states and mission planning group to prepare for any space rather than coming up searching cooperation. Putin said, thank God this is not being influenced by politics. We contributed cents and of course our stars that program obtained. This was to be enough money to search and rescue. No small importance for the Russia which created the program. The inclusion of Russia is partnership in the lunar gateway is a continuation of this policy too. We've impacted rising expectations are TCBMs, which prevents conflict. The ASAT's thumper doesn't apply because we create a catalog that can control them, and the app changes incentives for Russia to perceive our debris as ASATs. Say no, well, they won't do it because they proposed the plan and we can agree to it, and the closed catalog avoids all of the objections and their evidence. Russia won't cheat because they want better conjunction warnings. Without it, they would just be the status quo. Their no war defense is a double turn to the criticism. Will concede that NATO is an effective deterrent which prevents global war. It can't be consistent with their cosmopolitanism, and if they don't get rid of it, it turns the K, and it does not assume the current space dominance framework that encourages a Russian first strike, which proves that NATO is insufficient to solve all Russian space threats, but it does solve other threats like them invading the Baltics. Now, the Proliferation advantage. The yes space war. We've read the conclusion of the Johnson-Freeze take. There's evidence is about war in space, not a war extending to terrestrial assets. Rogue nations will strike first. Mounted 17. Space is becoming a sensible recent strike in recent years. I've seen it unlikely to players joining Club Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the DPRK, and South Korea. Numbers gone to estimated 52 countries. Space nations increasingly invested into their own space program. MAD doesn't check because we don't have a proportional or credible response, which ensures it escalates, and they have an incentive to attack asymmetric space assets. Now, the critique one framework. The judge should decide if the affirmative proposal for space cooperation is on balance desirable if implemented by the USG. Alternative frameworks must be two criteria. A, reciprocity that must provide equal access to valid frameworks, like if you have to do one thing wrong or negate or unfair because they don't require comparative assessment between competing options. The negative ones, the right to be about scholarship. You must see a holistic comparison of both sides. B, predictability. Arbitrarily excluding parts of the one who see like to plan the reach strategic ground in their favor and moves the one who see since the negative is always reactive. They can say debate is an iron chef competition and lose, and we would lose since we didn't cook anything. Two, there's no exceptional outside to politics, only elaboration of what our political community should do. Bound 15. Expressing subjectivity to community rather than essential attack and speak of activism, mutual incentive, struggle, not great about authorization, normalization of the political. It's constitutive access, social and human relationships, general relationships, transformative capacity, authorizing and normalizing the way politics is performed and recoding it. The politicals that conflict on top of the discourse back to deciding how discussing doing policies and acceptable aims open to governance for laws. It only becomes the case of accepted recognition of political authorities equated with policing the however little action would control a people for processes is necessary for them to systematically articulate policies that will people to accept the problematization and continue problematization provides ordinary people inside political communities with more general political significance as possible in politicization. 3, extinction first, possible level of the what outcome counts as the big one there. Ensuring there will be a future, the best way to increase the probability the future will contain a lot of value. 4, perm to both. 5, we turn the KA. The act treats SSA as a global good. It integrates all countries' data who have SSA into one network and then provides conjunction warning to all of those countries. B, space dominance. The act ends it. The alternative doesn't, and it leaves U.S. nationalists to, quote, relate to the state, contributing to U.S. anti-cosmopolitan control of the world. 6, the alternative fails. A, production of rupture does not result in change. 18, only by ignoring the heavy living critical scholars pastor but bridge in terms of radical into self-sufficient conclusion of other possible logically sufficient the problem state is from here to the critical zero rupture works on the assumption that the historical law of ruptures require more than evidence experimentation. Let's see the novel problem solves impossible to better outcomes naturally some of the rupture part of the moment what is willfully construct political time to do. B, no alternative economic system dooms solvency. It's more likely to be undesirable, results in totalitarianism, and means the movement can't build steam. Serenaded by radical political economy, only hope of having emancipatory effect considered real. It's on critical standpoints and alternative arrangement they imply really does this, but the result of standpoints of alternative often contradictory undesirable. They are feasible as a couple of implicit via the emancipation with form escape from domination illusion with little knowledge, but extended from the construction of a superior alternative frameworks to replace the old with the ignored question of possible framework alternative. What could be good or bad cannot be evaded without addressing such question. How could one decide what constitutes a superior alternative? But there should be their presumption in favor of community. There's little hope of achieving the goal of emancipatory social science if it shuns normative discussions of issues. C, you can't end the state, no chance of escaping sovereignty. Divorce 16, tactical choice will never break outside the armed opposition. The world is shady to rally as many Bolsheviks. You're still going to get a world of F-15 drones and close bombing, condemning agents of capitalist luxury. This the damper revolutionary inducement. This isn't just 1950 Cuba's lowers the odds of political revolution zero. This isn't fatalism. Means there's a little alternative organization through committed political action, including partisan politics. Seriously, none of us are going to end the verification. Should be condemned revolutionary violence. The dorm room pass the bomb. Conversation fodder. D, the alternative ends containment of rogue states. It would include them in any sort of global public good distribution scheme, which encourages them to ASAP the United States, causing a space war and extinction. 7, global citizenship is intellectual garbage, changes nothing and retrenches dominant norms. The impact is conflicts and flawed scholarship. Greek 13, the global citizen's imagination, according to Oxfam, it is important to assume that the world is unfair. Those terms are empty, doesn't be filled by the holder of power. The global citizen knows only how to drink fair trade scheme lattes. The policy goals are to bring about to the more than the repacking of existing courses and sprinkling in a few buzzwords. The global citizen, the globally competent. That's when that's all the global citizen means. It doesn't change what most policy schools have been doing. Schools no longer aspire to be Georgetowns as a past portrait of the world problems of the world cooperative process they can address rather than strategic landscape. You can form a reasoning patriots. Seems to be seen in military academies and war colleges. We will face a homogeneous educational landscape. Students will have a hard time learning French. So American perspective around the world. So much for intellectual diversity. We try to lead with higher esteem of the global community of particular groups. They deprive the nation of the ability to defend its interests. Citizens by definition group to which they act as attachment serves as yardstick for action. Without action is senseless. We love everyone. To love nobody. Avoiding abstract global sweeps from differences when everything is subsumed in uniform unnatural undertaking. The drivers of our actions destroy local conditions they were taught could only be by united proletariat. The project created instability. 8 nation state inevitable and resilient economics and national identity. Data both prove. Roger 12. Nation-state refuses to whether to provide resilient domain determination of global distribution of income. The fortunes are determined by where we are born. Inequalities account for inequality across nations. So much of globalization having direct national polarization. The source of strong political membership. These tendencies are true across the board. European citizens feel little attachment to the EU. 9. Nation-state identity protects the environment. Current Toronto 12. The patriotic values serve as the effective basis for environmental movement. It is an attachment to one's own nation. The least environmental concern it may be difficult to form a detachment with the moral obligation of ecosystems around the world because connection with landscapes only offers materializes one's interactions with it. Dividing the world up into smaller units is one way to facilitate effective citizenship. 10. Cosmo is neo-colonialist reinscriptions of the first world on the weak. It makes borders inevitable. Rash 10. The cosmopolitan orders unite all people in the states of the first world because of violation of liberalized, non-living neoliberal societies do not have a right to test their condemnation. And decent peoples have the right just to wage wars against them. Liberal societies become the standard in which societies are judged. The limitation of sovereignty is an imposed limitation by a sovereign citizen never linked to its own power. 11. Nation-state identity is inevitable and key to solving multiple scenarios for violence and war like disease, etc. Column 17. The nation-state is the primary bridge in the modern era produce successful experimentation. It is large-scale democracy. It is the basis of the rule of law. Globalization made belonging to a nation-state more not less important. Human rights is secured when their institutions internalized as civil rights is one of the seek limits on the exercise of state power. Contemplating and transcending it, the weak physical states typically fail their citizens in crisis. Strong states often unleash violence, pandemics, diseases, global crime, human rights abuses, and forced migration, all revealed in the dark side of globalization. It seemed to call for better states. The failed state seems as problematic and abusive state practices. Civil society is usually a valuable component to states, but not a substitute. Global crime is hard to fight with the tools of national legal system. Global disease challenges and challenges domestic healthcare systems. Crucially, most actually existing democracy has been achieved through rough states. You have more cards. Are you pulling them up? Okay. 12. Global governance and one world are bad. Nation states lead to institutional experimentation and diversity. Alternative leads to stagnation and homogeneity. Roger 12. Divided global polity represents additional political advantage, enables experimentation and competition through institutional forums and learning as we close to come to possess a laboratory. One worries the race to the bottom overlooks a multinational nation of institutional arrangements together. Regulations are put in place to benefit us. But few of us would move to our country with no speed limit where accidents become more common.
Yeah, so I've heard LIO good.
13. Liberal international order good. Mazur 18. With 70 years of hindsight, the hopes have been fulfilled. The multilateral help stabilize the economy, deter aggression, aligning 3/4 of the world around the norms, created powerful gravitational pull towards stability. The association of the U.S. is shared the world order to mitigate reactions to its misuse. The U.S. has well reached the end of its response with the answers to reinvigorate, not forsake multilateralism as waged antagonism towards world power. 14. They can't explain all of the rise in nationalism around the globe. It disproves the unsustainability of the nation state and proves that our AF is sustainable. 15. The state is both inevitable and good. Its self-correcting mechanism that maintains global stability, facilitates international cooperation to resolve intractable problems, and raises global standards of living while constantly correcting for failure. Any other system risks global catastrophe and can't be effectuated anyway, given liberalism's entrenched nature. Due to United Mary 18. The causes of the male circular. So is its solution: return to liberal democracy, to reduce inequality, progressive tax nature, defense and education, liberalism, continuing to development, salvation, liberal democracy, repeatedly proper crisis, financial markets, trigger the new deal, the main hand project, gave rise to arms, critical the problems of liberal democracy faced with, and certainly not. We're trying to be those who have faced and overcome today's our predictions, suffer from presentism, large-scale human interventions, such as liberal democracy, really challengingly rapidly as radically as they seem. Billions have geared their activity to expectations towards world's institutions replacing the liberal order will be extremely difficult. Growing interdependence makes the world difficult to overturn because vastly strengthened the world weapons involved. Liberal societies have been adapted to stimulating exploding innovation. Climate change will also require unprecedented international cooperation with bioweapons. Cyber warfare capabilities reach mass destructions are getting cheaper than making the international regulation and here the Soviet Union often worked in democracy build institutions, radical arms control agreements, global campaign to eradicate smallpox, Westphalian approach to whatever it comes governing the climate, the ocean, the atmosphere, the outer space, and the Antarctica. The resistance of Westphalian institutions provides a lasting foundation on which institutions can be erected. Liberalism has no competitor. 16. Even if the U.S. can't save the LIO, we can stabilize the transition. Haas 19. The U.S. needs to reach out to the various problems of globalization, climate change, trade, and cyber. These will not require resurrecting the gold order, building a new, and the U.S. must show the craft to the respect of regaining reputations of the United States reflects opposition to multilateralism needs to be rethought to further things. The overall unravel slowly is another thing for that country to have a large hand in willing to take the lead to dismantle the Chinese that order would be authoritarian with China to be dominated, resulting in collapse and nuclear force, new democratic order with lack of military capabilities, and more likely alternative to the world order, the chief disarray national population, cooperation, global challenges will all be precluded for deterioration instead of modern trends that spell catastrophe.
You ready?
Sorry, let me send up those guys.
Oh yeah, we'll wait for that. Alright. You good?
Mhm.
So on the critique, you said that you end American space dominance. Why?
Yeah.
What's the card?
Well, that's the thesis of our second advantage.
Card?
Johnson, Freeze,
What card says you
Robeck.
but you don't get rid of like space weapons. You
Right, but our strategy is one to counter the effects of American space dominance. Currently, other people.
But like we could still build the weapons, right? Clarify, like the United States
the
can
plan does
continue
not-
to field
The
ASAP.
plan does not fiat an
Great.
end, but it creates a framework that encourages the U.S. to
Yeah,
participate
no,
in benign
I got you.
policy.
So my next question is about this argument you make that's like we create a global collective good because we aggregate everyone's data.
Yeah.
For the states that are not included in the deal, whose data is aggregated and shared,
Well,
do they get a say in the
they don't have SSAs, so we just give them conjunction warnings. The United States currently gives conjunction
Okay,
warnings
but the only
unilaterally.
so to clarify, the only data in the deal is the United States and Russia's.
Well, because they have the two largest SSA networks, so yes.
Oh,
Like,
I was just
there's
clarifying
no
it.
other country that does not have redundant SSA, so we
Yeah, so
collect the
no, I
SSA
got you, I
and
got
give
you.
everyone
So,
conjunction warnings.
so my next question is about, there's like a whole bunch of cards that are like, the nation state is good at solving environmental problems. A lot of them are sort of like optimistic and are like nation states could coordinate to do environment. They could coordinate to do peacekeeping. Have you read a card that they would or that they are?
Well, we read that one card that says that patriotic values or connection to a locale is the basis of all environmental protection, both in terms of indigenous
Yeah, like,
movements,
I
but
get that,
also
like, you haven't-
in terms of like the EPA.
Yeah, so the
needs to
indigenous
stimulate-
movements thing would in fact disprove the rest of the nation state key stuff. But my question is whether or not you've read a card that's just like a uniqueness argument that's like nation states are
Yeah,
cooperating.
that
to
like
do those
long
things.
card Joseph pulls up cites Nixon's history of pushing environmental agreements, so the EPA, the
So
Clean Air
your-
Act, that are all based
your,
on national
Your example
sentiment.
of the benefits of the nation state is Nixon.
Well, for environmental policy, Nixon is one of the most progressive presidents that ever existed.
So do you have an example from like this millennium that says people are doing it now?
The-
Like I get that you have historical examples, which is like
So the burden for us is not to demonstrate the status quo is perfect, rather the use of
no,
nation
the
state is
burden
the only
of
way
use.
to
No, but
resolve
like your impact
problems.
turns do have to be happening and be unique. So like, have you read a card that the nation state is doing the good things
Yes,
you're
yes, we
describing?
read a bunch of cards that suggest that the Westphalian state system is the basis for how we cooperate on climate. It establishes enforcement for agreements. It establishes the basis
Now,
for protecting.
What
you know,
what
Paris
enforced?
proved that further.
So like Paris got shredded. Like states destroyed Paris. That seems like a decidedly negative example. Like, do you have like what are the agreements that we're doing now that are working?
The variety of protections that sort of treat the environment within a border as
Like what?
Like the examples I gave, the EPA, the Clean Air Act, the Clean
The ones
Water
that
Act,
just like get
Superfund,
repeatedly
CERCLA.
destroyed, deregulated, and circumvented by
But
corporations.
that has nothing to do with Cosmo, okay? Like Trump wanting to
Yeah,
deregulate the
we
EPA
know
is
it's
not
not
a
Cosmo.
nation-state framework.
But like, it's just like I'm looking for like a single compelling modern example of your impact.
Define modern. If you're suddenly like modernity is different, that is
Well, yeah,
obviously
we read
the
a bunch of
opposite
cards
your
that in the
criticism.
21st century the dynamics for states are different. So shit from the 50s doesn't.
We'll start with that. I'll reference it. They should really solve it. They said it can't solve their impact, which means it's not good enough. There's no terminal impact to it. No one has read a terminal impact to it. So, who cares? Also, yeah. Okay, 723. Okay, 10. Okay. What?
Is there a dot?
Yeah.
Miles, I'm gonna give you the working timer.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Is there a
Yeah. It's not too long ago, but there is a card. I want to. Sorry, I'm just going to move one thing around in the doc, so I'm going to take a little bit of extra practice and see if it works.
Two more cups.
I am, yeah, I just kind of move the thing around in the doc. I could have just right before that. Okay, we used 5 more seconds, so wherever that puts us.
18.
Okay. Good?
Yeah.
National governments are desperate to prove they're still in control of the planet, merely the latest entering the nation state as the primary unit of international analysis about the level of discourse and policies and ritual practice of nationalism. They calculately train debaters and scholars to preserve the current system of geopolitics at all costs, which is a bias, and that to every card they've read is more subtle than outright political extremism, but eventually manifests through xenophobic exclusionist Montecalci nationalism, causes extinction, which is dropped, and prevents collective social solutions to existential threats like the environment, cyber attacks, and disease, and also causes reactionary lash out from insecure leaders that causes nuclear grade power. Those are Clement's evidence. Any risk of impact outweighs one. Every impact is inevitable in a world of escalating nationalism. They've conceded that it causes Russian and Chinese aggression, Trump lash out, and global conflict because the state's defense mechanism against being unable to provide material needs for citizens is escalating military eventualism to nationalism, prevents international space co-op through national space policy group sign. The most recent NSP states in order to enhance national security, the U.S. must have robust capabilities to foster national security. These principles national security and national president guys, there's an excellent example the U.S. claim to. A majority of the states, regardless of the national nature of the stable national space program, tells that the U.S. keep tech holds close to national resistance, launching European sets to maintain the line share of the program. The framework argument we can win links to the plan because space is a key zone to decenter the nation state and the creation of new regimes, which I'll explain on the perm. But interpretation of the neg can win if it disproves the affirmative theory of international relations or proposes a better alternative. We agree detail and political focus is good, but only our interp solves one efficiency. Their interp requires debate to refine general theories of IR and politics through single case studies like the plan at a time, comparing individual acts to the status quo, starting at the level of theory, turns their education offense, which will concede at waste. This is fair. It's not unpredictable to hold the app accountable to a model of IR. It's worse for fairness that they can shift their explanation of international actors throughout the debate to a vague neg ground, like they do with regard to rogue actors, and doesn't allow picks because models justify plans, so you couldn't just justify the same action with a different predicted model. At worst, the app gets countries good against the K, which is better than anything they get against a counterplan or a D. It proves it meets reciprocity and predictability. Our theory is political. I'll concede governments from below works, which is in that card. They rate of truth, solvency, and our framework is relevant to model refinement. Their interp subordinates IR theory to hypothesis testing. That causes cascading failures because of the inherent complexity of the international system and lack of sufficient data prevents accurately predicting behavior without refined theoretical models. Mearsheimer 13. Theories of low zone of IR. Grand theories of isms of all shape study of international politics, the West Roman constructive liberalism, Marxism, realism, U.S. international political ratings and advanced grand critique isms. Field is moving away from developing theories and emphasizing hypothesis testing theories with a minor role with the effort to devote to in testing empirical hypotheses. use for attempt for the critical theory should play in guiding empirical analysis, critical random theories. Most important, especially in regard to the inherent complexity and diversity of the international system, and nature, available value theories, and value because the world's infinitely complex many theories to identify causal mechanisms that explain recurring behavior. Well-grounded theories are essential for understanding how this properly sophisticated and grounded theory produce flawed results. They said extinction outweighs one. We have an extinction at blah, but you should not use util in debate. Studies show opting for utilitarian sacrifice in toy problems like the simulated of a debate trains participants to actually be less concerned with the great good in real life, which turns it. Con 15. Research focused on in the world and which participants choose to sacrifice one to save a greater number of cost studies. We investigate related to utilitarian judgment and dilemmas and traits judgment and behavior to reflect or reject concern for greater good. We found utilitarian judgment was associated with rational egoism, less donation, less identification with the whole of humanity, a core feature of classical unilateral. The only reason why extinction good in debate would make sense is because it trains us to be ethically calculable outside of it, which means that we turn all of that stuff. They say permutation due with every link is a DA to the perm because the index, the theory that produced the IR policy and the regime that it creates, which concretizes Westphalia in space. There's no net benefit, so only a reciprocal link is net. One, language. The rhetoric of states as discrete autonomous subjects that interact as individual people do locks in the Westphalian system through a grammar that homogenous entire populations of countries like Russia and China into singular government actors. It subconsciously foments nationalism and hostility because people get substituted for policies of an small elite ruling class, which also derives legitimacy for military adventurism and colonialism by claiming his actions are representative of entire countries. It's Davies. It means that even if the content of the plan is good or doesn't strengthen nation states, its assumptions codify the system which will be projected into space. Nationalism is exerted through right-wing extremism, but it is strengthened through singular iterations and liberal politics like the F. There enough evidence warns of rogue states obtaining ASATs despite not naming a single one, framing them as a threat to the stability as an entire category of the existing nation-state order. Cross-six of the 1AC further said that the only way to read that card is to just assume that it means North Korea and Iran, which proves how the discursive nationalism subtly transitions into securitization because they are left with no choice but to assume the mystical rogue state actor must be North Korea and Iran. Two regimes, space legal regimes, create nationalism and interrupt a current trend of decentering the Westphalian nation-state. Even if you think that the act itself is not beholden to nationalism, the global reaction and external perception to a new legal regime initiated and operated by the namesake of the United States and Russia breathes new life into a global culture of nation-state politics and prevents transition and is a link to the plan we can win on regardless of everything else because the status quo is solving gradually now, which is Navi. There, all wrote in evidence is three lines that Norm solved by holding people accountable, which reinforces the nation-states as global arbiters of conduct rather than the benevolent benefactors of space data that the 2AC would want you to believe, because it's further underscored by cross-six of the 1AC that cements the regime as a product of national ruling classes because only Russia and the United States put into it. Three, theory. Their theory of their model of international relations requires nation-states to be the principal unit of analysis. Their Johnson evidence describes the scenario for nuclear war as the first game involving anti-satellite weapons stopped in 5 minutes because it went nuclear. Bam, nation B nuked nation A. This is not far out. That proves the national state realist model that they're require on the decoupling DA. Creating new paradigms requires fully separating local politics from the nation-state because otherwise they'll always get subsumed into larger units of political analysis. That's Ginty. The if we win framework is so perm because you can consider the methodological errors before the plan, but the presence of those errors also structurally increases the chance the act is bad or turns bad later in unpredictable ways, which means including the plan with the alternative increases the chances of failure. They say link turn all they including everyone doesn't mean that you're not nation state. They also the extent of the link turn was we give it to all those countries, which just improves that they further concretize the Westphalian model and miss the boat that we're an IR critique of the principal unit of analysis. Theirs is wrong, which makes that even if the nation state is theoretically good, the fact that they use an incorrect unit of analysis means it's more likely to just create errors, which is just drops. Space weaponization, you don't solve it. The one I was going to talk about that, and you allow U.S. dominance to continue, which is crossing of the 2AC. We're not rupture or radical change. We're not hippies. Instead, we think we need to change the way that IR thinks about units of analysis. Said, I'll explain the alternative in a sec. Econ, we don't change it. However, the fact that there is no different economic system proves the nation state's unsustainable. Globalization has created a financial system that is unregulatable by national governments, which is what our last card in the 1AC said, which proves that the fact that the economy will not change, meaning nation states must. Divorce step one. The alternative is a relocalization of international politics that removes the nation state as the unit of analysis and instead sends the complex network of space corporations, individual leaders, movements to undermine national control of territory and transnational political knowledge economies. They create new forms of conflict management. Error heavily negative because post-Westphalian systems of political organization are conceptually discounted by political and scholarly elites that have a vested interest in preserving the status quo at all costs. It's Ginty, which means you're biased against every single impact when they read. Rapid tech breakthroughs and even even the original development of the nation-state system itself prove us the large social transformation are possible. That's how the Act prevents that by tending to integrate local politics into the nation-state, which is how classical IRA theories aggregate large, disparate populations into homogeneous units as nations that ignore international complexities and new opportunities for cooperation. It solves the case because their scenario for econ collapse causing wars, defunding nuclear security. It proves the incapacity of states to maintain monopolies on violence. Russia launching a nuclear under crisis scenario is individual people making irrational decisions that their theory of realism could never assume, especially the one that Johnson Free said, the DeVore evidence. It's also unsustainable. The nation state is non-unique, so often makes a try after a controlled shift. One, UK, France, Spain, Italy, and Germany are facing legitimacy crises, far-right electoral victories, and protracted recessions with public support for national institutions. Two, they've dropped that it specifically doesn't work in space because of new types of tech and a lack of a coherent version of sovereignty, which means the plan fails even if their impact turns right. Two, deregulated finance, autonomous weapons, and religious conflicts cross borders are unsolvable and corrupt political system, which compounds legitimacy crisis. Three, citizens are in poverty while they watch political and economic elites seamlessly transit the global system, which are incapable of regulating wealth. But the desperate attempt to revive the nation state causes violent exclusionary lashing, which was conceded. Divorce about armed revolution, it's not that, but a change in international relations. Their next card about rogue states, they don't include rogue states, they only include Russia and the United States, which I've already explained. Citizenship being bad. The alternative is not a global, single citizenship, but instead an analysis begins with the local, actually fractures the international, singular form of citizenship. There's also this person that's just cranky about university kids buying lattes, which proves the elite ivory tower flip that the people who have an interest in preserving the status quo will maintain. The resiliency card doesn't actually say it. It's 7 years old and new Trump arriving electoral victories. They say it's fracturing now, and our evidence is it should be skeptical. It does not solve the environment. I'll insert a card that says that they're just summarizing one argument, not the whole thing. Contorno. Obviously, they get to insert cards, otherwise there's a moral hazard. Bullshit. The rash evidence says that rights are good. Not that they'll ever be implemented. Same with their Calhoun evidence, which just says that disease and crime are things states could solve, not that they will. The next card about innovation doesn't actually say anything about innovation. The LIO good argument. Also, all the stuff about unsustainability answers this, and that the LIO was good in the past. Our stuff is that it's all changed because of globalized economics. Global nationalism caused extinction and it's triardite. The next card about Dudenberry and Eichenberg says that the United States should take the lead, same with the ILO, but not that they will, and that they need to recuperate respect. Our argument is that they've lost it, and it is irrecuperable.
Oh.
705.
Okay, my first series of questions is about your framework interpretation.
Yeah.
Your counter-interpretation is that we have to disprove your theory or propose an alternative one. Can you win without an alternative?
An alternative theory of international relations.
Understood. So if we concede your interpretation, what is the role of the 1AC?
You have to defend a theory of international relations that predicts the plan, was a good idea of cooperation. But we can win your theory is bad without winning the plan itself is bad.
I understand. Your ethics argument. How should we make ethical decisions if not based on determining the largest number of people that die?
In toy games, you should use things like compassion and
So are
hostility
you
to
not
other people.
compassionate to the victims of a nuclear conflict?
No, it's that when you make decisions where weighing that is more important than
Okay,
ongoing forms of suffering, that it
got it.
actually trains
So-
us to be callous and deprioritize that violence.
My next series of
So
questions.
pretending you care about it is
My
worse.
next series of questions regards your alternative. So our IR theory has suggested that the United States government has nuclear weapons, Russia has nuclear weapons, they're about to use them against each other. What is
Yeah.
your conception of starting from the local? How does that conceive the nuclear relationship between U.S.
So
and Russia?
one, that's actually not really what your theory of international relations predicts. Your theory of international relations predicts that the United States government owns nukes, same with the Russian government, and that individual people making irrational decisions within those administrations will cause an escalatory, unpredictable spiral. That's our point. That when you don't have a rational model for escalation. You don't.
But that's not an alternative framework. So you're just saying.
No, yeah, it is. Our alternative framework is that you should understand how individual people, one, create the possibility for insecurity.
Okay, but individual
two,
people still represent the state. They are controlling the military's arsenal. So you can't really divorce the individual from the job they have.
You absolutely can, because the job is just a group of a bunch of more individuals that act in contradictory different ways.
In terms of creating global norms, who or what would be in charge of norms if you are turning everything to the local?
Well, so we just don't think there should be an international legal norm that regulates all behavior the same way.
So in terms of space norms, what is nothing. It's just there is no space governance.
Well,
there's no outer space
well, no.
treaty,
Like
there's
our
no-
evidence about space actually says that a perhaps better way to regulate or control.
NATO.
I have like there's an answer to that about space right prior to that.
The NATO is another example. So what would your alternative that focuses on the locals say about military alliances like NATO or like the United States military architecture?
We don't think that nation-state-centric military alliances are good.
Okay, so then similarly with Iran and North Korea, are these countries just individual? So I mean, what does the
Iran and North Korea are great examples of how internal different
so
political
my
factions
question is that
complicate your model.
You've read a lot of impacts about the need to create a global regulatory scheme, economy being one, environment being the other.
I don't agree with that. We
Okay,
said
so
there's transboundary problems.
Everything being local is neoliberalism. It is the
No, it's
idea.
not.
So what do you do
That's
to
actually
regulate
not neoliberalism.
transboundary financial regulation?
Neoliberalism
Is
is the belief that you can attempt to
Does the
control
alternative-
transboundary problems through like these artificial, government regimes that fail and decrease respect, which is what your press about.
One second, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, here's 4 seconds. Which puts us at 7:40 here. The one in R is sent. It's just in case, in the order of the links.
Let me pull it up, sorry. Okay, good.
All right. We good?
That a lot of people ask me that in the doc chain. I think they just ask you.
Yeah.
Whatever.
All right. We good? Great. Our case arguments that use realism prove that even a world where they win their theory has limited utility. The conclusion of that theory is incompatible with the one I see. SSA doesn't solve collisions. We can only track 4% of objects, but all the tech on Earth info overload means they'd make mistakes and crash apps into each other. They'd exhaust fuel, avoiding close calls, and end up being sitting ducks that you can't refuel, which makes collisions structurally more likely. And at best, the full scope of the app solves 10 to the -4 probability. Maneuvering errors mean they'll steal objects into each other 30% of the time. On Troge 13, operators have intract positional bias and orbit solutions resulting in unknown collision threats. 70% wasted maneuver, 70% missile loads, and when maneuvers are performed maneuvering toward the threat that 30% of the time norm solve isn't attached to a card, and it's hopelessly opportunistic, but proves all the rising expectations arguments I'm going to make on the case is obviously not sufficient, or there won't be enough collisions to solve globally. Those collisions turn all three advantages. It looks like a surprise attack to the U.S. and counter space ops to Russia, which proves that if they don't solve this, they don't solve either of the other two, because everything except the econ impact is people losing their shit over a satellite getting hit. Sharing's not enough. You can't predict future plans even when there's multiple data sources, or solve norms. Dickinson 18. That is only as good as what you do with the debate out of problem where operators get warning when they not needed, don't understand how to react. This is becoming more pronounced without covariance info. It is difficult to know what decisions are correct even with multiple data sources. Only the operators know future plans. The debris stuff, they conceded that nobody would miscalculate for debris. The Soviets shot down satellites in the 90s and apocalyptic air tactics that saturate our dependence on satellites. We never respond to force. National leaders don't care. The worst version is Twitter tirades, but not Israel, which takes out the rogue state's impact. If it's debris, the first one would obviously realize, everybody would immediately realize after the first sat got hit by debris that Kessler was coming, and they wouldn't immediately escalate everywhere else because they would realize that debris was flooding the atmosphere, which means that if it doesn't happen the first time, it wouldn't happen ever. Econ decline doesn't cause war. Interdependence can just as easily cause more war, even between nuclear states. Higher opportunity cost of war costs uncertainty over resolve, which raise the risk. You need to disaggregate the effects of trade, which their studies don't do. Effects remains for nuclear countries. There's no incentive. Defense wasn't diversionary war. They conceded that man is a total shill, but interdependence defense disproves the stupid argument that defense cuts would make our allies think we're abandoning them, because everyone cuts defense during a recession, and nobody believes that would be enough, which is the Spaniel evidence. It can just as easily cause more war. Spaniel 3.5 conventional was Wisdom about interdependence and conflict predicts opportunity cost make war less likely to show a non-monotonic relationship between cost probability to war increasing the cost of uninformed parties. Upon an second order effect is exacerbating info asymmetries about willingness to maintain peace war can occur more frequently. This challenges how fellows traditionally with interdependence mediated intensified trade have compelling competing effects on the probability of war. No card says that it would crash the entire economy, that it would be irreversible, or that the scope of the debris would be enough to destroy our infrastructure, which is a global frame, because all of these cards are highlighted and tagged so opportunistically. The Russia advantage, the rising expectations turn at the top. It turns all three advantages. Negotiations collapse inevitably because Putin would make demands that the United States structurally cannot accommodate because they have radically different conditions for what the world order should look like. The norms would become a huge fight over accountability on their own because who controls the data? How is man? Who distributes those notifications? What body's in charge? And a host of other minutiae not listed in the plan would all immediately become conflicts in the negotiating process, especially with Trump. Dresner 19, there was no reliable Trump story, and he repeatedly contradicting his advice. Trump, he's sabotaging the bargaining position. His statements weakening the hand of his negotiators, severely damaging. Trump is the worst way possible. He is losing all American ships at the global bargaining table. Is a terrible negotiator surrounded by a dysfunctional team. Rising expectations cause boom and bust cycles in U.S.-Russia relations that increased instability. 3 decades of attempts like the prove restraint is key, but answers all their co-op numbers because it proves that even if there's slight increases now, TCBMs are an unreliable way to maintain peace. Rumor 19, for 30 years the U.S.-Russia relationship experienced boom bust cycles. New admin generates aimed at a partnership. Optimism follows obstacles emerge, and optimism is a way to pessimism by the end of the admin. The relationship is the lowest since the Cold War. Russia with its rogue actions bears major responsibility. The U.S. policy has ignored Russia's history, cultural security requirements. The same for Moscow. Administrators pursued unrealistic options, refusal to accept Russia for what it is. Overreach has been a persistent feature reflected in commitments to ambitious goals. That means to accomplish some U.S. policymakers' exaggerated ability to affect Russia, ability to distinguish between core peripheral concerns or prior present war, which U.S. approach could have resulted in a more productive relationship. Westphalian nation-state sovereignty is wrong that produces errors in IR theories. That means you should actively discount their predictions. It also disproves their theory of IR is compatible with Russian and Chinese ambitions and flips TCBMs. Osiander, one Westphalian constitution for granted heavily current change should be judged the discipline theorized against the backdrop of past that is imaginary, accepted our narrative about Westphalianism. Westphalia is a product of the 19th and 20th century fixation on sovereignty, the ideology of sovereignty, hammer development of IR theory. This article may help us to gain a better theoretical understanding of contemporary international politics. Russia would say no, they'd get destroyed in negotiations. No one believes that Trump would hold to anything after the INF and Iran. All their evidence says they pitched it to the UN. Our Lambakis evidence says they do that for soft power because they know no one will ever accept it, but that they would never reverse militarization because they're invested in it now, which also proves they don't solve ASAP prolif because other countries would respond to Russia even if the United States stopped, but they don't have a card, they do that either, which means they conclusively don't do it. The NATO stuff, the alt doesn't fiat away its removal, which is all we have said. It's unsustainable now, and only we solve the transition. So if you concluded it has an impact, only we solve it. No one's read a terminal to anything other than a space war with Russia, so there isn't an impact to the turn or anything in the Baltics, but they dropped everything else that Moscow believes. Moscow doesn't want war. Putin is focused on domestic concerns. He wants to expand ties, and at worst the conflict won't be militarized, which is the Trenton evidence, which removes the incentive to go to war. The arms races stuff is answered above. Russia will never give up their weapons because they are afraid of other conventional American military imbalances, which is their argument that we're overwhelmingly reliant now, and we have things like ASAPs they don't get rid of. The prolific advantage, no space wars, hype systems are redundant. It's lucky Mark and propaganda, which is the conclusion of their Johnson Freeze article. The rogue ASAP stuff, there's no way Iran is getting an ASAP. There's no card that says they would. We'd strike them regardless, but no state thinks they'd get away with attacking the United States, and obviously India and China thump because other states are fielding space weapons external to the deal. No line says they would strike. That Harrison evidence is a defense contractor. There's a re-highlighting in the doc, and it's about Russia and China fielding space weapons, not the United States. And the card that says we would retaliate says that just as the word retaliate, not that we would respond with a fucking nuclear first strike, which is completely insane. There's no space war. Its hype systems are redundant, which means even a single satellite going down wouldn't meaningfully moderate operational capacity unless there was a full spectrum strike on American infrastructure, which only the United States, which only another great power would do, which means even if Iran hit one satellite, it obviously wouldn't imperil global war fighting. We wouldn't strike Ross. 18, Trump's award for Israelis and Saudis as well as the president said as the main way aims to counter Iran.
Is that Mark?
Yeah, they counter Iran.
We have 7 minutes.
Should we see? Two minutes. I'm saving cards. Do you have other cards in your house? Yeah, I have 2 cards or 3 cards. Yeah, I got 2 cards. If you want me to just put the docs together. Yeah, it's just each one are. Alright, let me integrate with the second save that too. Here, where'd you save those? Just sheets blue, 1 of our cards. So we're just gonna set out 1 doc instead of 2. Then 1 of our cards.
The timer's gonna go off.
Fuck. Okay, I'll just yeah, just select the 2 doc, put it in the center.
Can you set your trigger to slightly either direction?
Alright, so
Actually, I can just like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Case in the order of the proliferation advantage, the Russia advantage, the degree advantage. K, starting with the OB. Can you repeat the order? After the order of proliferation, Russia, then debris, then the K starting with the OB.
So I'm still getting the line on. What's up? I'm just still pulling up the top.
Okay, ready?
No. Alright, now I'm ready.
Ready?
Yep.
If we win the Space Force inevitably because of our reactions that demonstrates the decided the alternative Space Force inevitably goes nuclear, the lack of proportional response ensures the global escalation as well as retaliation. There are all arguments to respond. There's not being proliferation in the status quo. Yes, proliferation evidence is that a technology expanding across global countries to Iran as well as North Korea will attack the United States asset and mass that as a natural example of debris only has the same information you distinguish between what is and what is not natural and ensure proper attribution. The existence of attribution itself is sufficient to solve and creates a chilling effect across the globe. The asset proliferation massively expands the scope of its target. They have no card whatsoever, just the assertion of course into Iran. They do limit bar 2019. Iran has been approved capabilities ballistic evidence can offer Iran the potential of ASAT missiles, control target CL4 ISR, that the US would need to integrate to military operations. The example of China and India demonstrates solvency for the affirmative because attribution would solve, and India is an ally, and China has no interest because they would not be able to do it in the world of attribution. There are no war steps to see if one satellite modified. Yes, retaliation, the justification evidence is likely to escalate. The US would perceive it as an attack, and things would go ballistic and nuclear very quickly, which turns it outweighs the ultimate result of Shirley cannot govern this. The Russia stuff. At the top, they say rising expectations. 1, not unique. They drop the cooperation is high now. We do tons of stuff with Russia, so they expect that anyway. 2, appeasement's high now. Hobbin 10, 14, Putin wants to make sure money to get tired when trouble so much to Moscow. Coming the hills of trouble with the UK. Trump talks about Trump series giving the Russians the for the bubbly. 3, links to their K. They can't keep thoughts and they can't go for because they use the nation states and gives them analysis. They say it makes more demands. There's no dispute or negotiation that occurs. We are conceding to Russia's demand for this framework. This is something they proposed in the 59th Vienna Convention of UN, the 59th annual Vienna UN Copious Scotland, which demonstrates there's not any sort of negotiation. At least the planning is written in a way that is exactly what they want to. They say rising expectations bad. It's a double step because they use the nation states mechanism now, so they drop the barrels because it's happening now. While they're westwardly bastard beyond the K, the say no debate. 1, Russia promotes the planning, so they say yes because in their interest, and also have they also don't want to have their space assets destroyed. 2, close catalog cells. They don't have to reveal the data. It overcomes any objection that they could possibly identify. Yes, the result of demilitarization. The TCBM works. That's a knock evidence would say drop. The NATO, no Russian war stuff. It does not apply to space. They not assume it, but it demonstrates the importance of interstate formations as a bulwark to aggression to other countries. Without them, those things go nuclear. It is a distant alternative. They cannot spike out of because consequences matter of the IR theory. It's a demonstration of the importance of an IR theory. None of the cards about the doctrine of space or evidence cites Russian nuclear doctrine, cites a colonial, a colonel, and the Russian military demonstrate they have an incentive to escalate in order to de-escalate. That quickly goes ballistic. Debris advantage. We're not not going for it, but all their evidence is described with the status quo, so there's no risk of offense on this stuff whatsoever. The alternative does not solve it. Their interdependence bad argument is relevant because the economic decline is not the same as interdependence. It doesn't solve it. That was not the scenario we went for. Anyway, the critique overview at the top. Their argument of all impacts being inevitable to be answered with liable and decay. However, populist authorities exaggerate 917 populist circumstances and divergent. The analogy is not hold up there. So many governments against this topic domestic and national level. There's a descent in economic geopolitical chaos. It's not the crisis and frustration are likely to continue. They say that nations will France space cooperation. This is a critique of unilateralism, which is not what the affirmative is. For God's sakes, none of the cards apply to this because it's a form of international cooperation and mandates an establishment of an international regime of space cooperation. It was proof that it's not a form of nationalism, but it does use the nation state. And there's a disconnect between the two that will be explored on the link debate proper. Choice number one, framework debate. 1. The role of the judge to decide if the affirmative proposal for space cooperation is on balance desirable if implemented by the next political government. 2. They get the K in the representation stuff, but there's just not a prior question disproving iron theory. They must demonstrate the right theory has no consequences. But if we win our impact terms, we win the debate. They drop them. An example of our IR theory being good is the necessity of this IR theory to cope with environmental, etc. impacts. 3. Failure to evaluate the effects of advocacy, violence, and constitutive connection between knowledge and politics. Bond argues we must consider the two in conjunction, not in isolation. The person that cannot spin out of the impact terms. The IR theory they have describes and constitutes the world and prescribes a set of normative actions. Nation-state good is offense against this argument. So is the plan because it demonstrates the importance of a nation-state analysis. 4. Fairness always. You must consider the consequences of the plan and the affirmative gives us a chance. Or when you see design around a hypothetical implementation policy comparison, we can't be every possible reinterpretation of a single arbitrary choice for a prior question. We merely need to demonstrate the affirmative is a good idea and that I can outweigh all this stuff. Reciprocity will prove stuff. The model refinement argument is wrong. We agree with it. Theory is important, which is demonstrated by the important. 2EC number 3. Extinction outweighs. It doesn't rely on utilitarianism because it can begin from an inalienable right that every person has to exist. It demonstrates we're not sacrificing anybody for a burden to demonstrate that. Regardless, even if you belie this argument, extinction outweighs ever begins an infinite amount of value in the amount of future generations that lives up to 500 trillion if the Earth exists for 100 billion years. So discounting those requires you to say that one life now is worth 1 billion in 400 years. It's complete and utter nonsense. 2EC number 4. Permission to move does solve because they have no link whatsoever with the establishment of the plan or the mechanism or the affirmative just vague indexed to the nation state theory. This demonstrates the fact that NATO can't exist and the alternatives explained is fundamentally nonsensical and vague just demonstrates the importance and the possibility of nation existing and how we can use that analysis effectively. They whittle down their alternative so much that none of the links can assume the combination of both they have. The aft link turns the entire stuff. SSA is a transnational attempt to establish international mechanisms of cooperation. It's not saying that reifies nationalism. There's a disconnect between using the nation state and nationalism. We don't reify the central identity of Russia or China. In fact, we said the exact opposite. We said they're homogenous and space dominance, which has certainly turned to all these arguments. Their first link about using the nation is wrong. We really use the nation as a heuristic to interpret international action, which is what they have exactly done on the case of a rogue state's argument is fundamentally a diss at everything because it said there must be state action in the first place. Their second link about regimes is all impacted by the necessity of case and it proves the importance of those things. The third argument with the theory we've impacted theory we've done it and I can read below and the model does not require the nation state anyway as demonstrated by this. They said framework doesn't mean a perm. That's wrong. Framework does require permutation because the theory we are proposing is the permutation. 2EC number 6 alternative fails group 2EC 6, 7, 8. 1. Blueprints okay, that's a radical change going to have emancipation and consider critical standpoints. Normally questions cannot be escaped. In-depth strategies and direct plans and necessary to compare superior strategy. There's no hope to emancipate from radical state if they show normal discussion. That's divorce. 2. They result in rogue state plural of vague strategies against politics create the balance of the greatly forward and Stalinism. Recreates the opportunity for opportunists to seek power. 3. Extend Roderick. The nation state refuses to wither away and has proved remarkably resilient. It's a great identity. People want to take power and it's bolstered by divorce. The state will never go away. We should analyze it. 4. The alt does not solve the case. It allows the plan and the purpose of slam dunk or doesn't can resolve the entanglement arguments. The sustainability debate proper. All their first, the nation state even if collapse the the plan is key to ensure the sustainable transition. Dundee and Agabir says that international institutions are fundamentally and remarkably resilient. Always they simply regulate themselves rather than going entirely. They don't solve the finance stuff so they can't access this argument. The citizens of poverty is not a reason the whole system is going away. Nation and Roger says that international institutions such as the United Nations are fundamentally strong as well as NATO, and there's no way the alternative can get rid of those things, and presuming they can is fundamentally irresponsible. It demonstrates the nation state is strong and is here to say. Now the impact charts. The 2NC suck on this. They don't get to insert cards and laws and insert a number of arguments. It's not a moral hazard. They're the ones who create battle arguments and inserting answer and other things. Dundee and Agabir as well as Mazar dropped. 1. It's critical to solve the environment. It's far too late to with the way the nation state. Only international negotiations and regulations on climate change are possible. This may not be in the status quo, but it's a consequence for our political theory, which demonstrates the importance of solving that. They dropped the war as well as the terrorism arguments to explain with their NATO arguments, but only nation states can provide a mechanism of analysis that can purport to solve terrorism. All this stuff is fundamentally inevitable and will just bounce back if you get rid of it, so it's better to use it and try to solve global problems.
7:18.
7:18. I took 5 seconds. Did you count
Yeah.
that? Okay, great. Yeah. You actually type that separately if you check it to me.
That's fine.
Where's that stuff?
It should be there, but I can hand you the document right here if I can.
No, I got it. Never mind. Okay, it's the K, and then the debris advantage, the Russia advantage, and the Proliferation advantage. Good? Great. Nationalism is a ritual practice is instrumental to its macro-political effects to make extinction inevitable because it forces groups to turn away at the expense of solving collective threats like the environment, cyber disruption, environmental collapse, and only manifest through the action of individuals outside the regulatory power of nation states. It also creates the conditions for nuclear war because insecure leaders have to take increasingly escalatory military adventures and to create the need to protect citizens. Thus, Clemson has to protect their impact events. One, it's doing what red more cards in the block. Two, analogizing only to World War II, but says discontent and frustration are likely to continue, which proves that all the steps inevitable. They also still dropped all the other impacts besides this. One escalation Syria turns the case. You should feel confident voting on perception because they're only going for a confidence building internally. Again, nationalism makes co-op more likely to break down because the U.S. will hijack the process. It outweighs one. Nationalism makes every impact, and national governments no longer have regulatory power to resort to adventurism that causes their scenarios for wars. It also empirically causes unilateral, antagonistic national space policies because governments have to increasingly lackluster cooperation with other countries in pursuit of space as a symbolic project to defend the nation state, and the U.S. will gradually take over more of the project like it did in the ISS and Intelsat to push out partners. That's correct. They've not said nationalism is low now, which means that this inevitably prevents the act from solving. They're dropping that this is what makes Russia, China, Iran, and the U.S. all fight wars now to secure their legitimacy of their domestic population, which means their substantive try or die for a smoother transition, which does not restart a new attempt to protect the nation state's legitimacy with global space cop, but also causes miscalculation with their own scenarios are based on irrational individual actors like not adequately funding nuclear security or individuals in the Russian Federation, the United States causing war. Their theory of international relations can never adequately predict or prevent that, so it's try or die for a theory of IR that recognizes individuals and local politics as the mean through which international conflicts occur. Now, the co-op no links, yes, it does cooperation between major powers and instantiates international relations as a game of the ruling elite, which justify their policies based on pretending that it represents the minority, which justifies global imperialism that escalates to violence and escalates to global conflict, makes the international system unsustainable, and causes intergroup hostility that makes war inevitable because we learn to hate Russia and China instead of the leaders that propagate their policies, which is the 1NC evidence. I think the first part, the framework stuff, our interpretation is that if we beat their theory of IR, we don't have to beat the individual plan. One, efficiency, which is basically dropped. We've all agreed we should make politics, but testing implementation of in IR theory one plan at a time is inefficient. It means we never achieve the explanatory power to implement governance from below, which their card says was key, and we conceded, which is their Mearsheimer evidence, which is our Mearsheimer evidence, because testing IR policies one debate at a time can never resolve enough actual accuracy. That was burned to evidence, but one in our red says that the Westphalian system of IR is inaccurate, so even if you think that they get to weigh the plane, if you drop the judge instruction, you should just assume that it propagates errors because unpredictable reasons why the IR theory, their stuff is based on will inevitably cause contradictions. It's also fair, country's good, and it is offense, it's better than any DA's and counterpoint that ever gets predictable because they had to use an entire theory of IR to construct the plan, which means there's no reason they should not be able to defend it. Politics we conceded was good. Obviously, we solved that better though through better theories of international relations. If their card says that debate can spill up through governments from below, which we conceded, which means that we do solve extinction outweighs, we'll concede our impacts are bigger, and the case is basically nothing because they've considered you can't do collision testing, permutation to both. The language of international states is autonomous subject, which reifies them through everyday nationalism, which they've conceded gets transmuted into political xenophobia nationalism. To the space regime, they've dropped uniqueness for this link and alternative that the space regime now is catalyzing the transition away from nation-state politics because people recognize technological complexity and lack of sovereign territory is what is going to complicate biophilia. However, redoing new legal regimes like the app is what is a desperate attempt to revive the system, which causes more violence. It also gets subsumed, which is our Ginty evidence that says that very in analysis for efficiency's sake will always just assume the local into the macro, which prevents solvency. SSA, they don't do it, they just give to other countries, which is a reason I've already explained. There's no reason why this solves our broader impact about all of the nation state being bad. The alternative stuff, all of the stuff linked to them, there's no reason
the proliferation. There's no card that says that we cause proliferation. There are ways where we solve it, and it's inevitable. The nation state, frame for the nation state good. These cards are prescriptive, not predictive. None of them say governments are liberally applying human rights or protecting the environment or decreasing global crime. Only our evidence from this year describes the actual activities of states. Tons of truancy examples. Every European government's either in recession, under right-wing takeover, or xenophobically enacting draconian refugee policy to desperately secure the illusion of citizenship. Trump, Putin, and Xi are conducting military venturism to distract domestic audiences, deregulated finance, autonomous weapons, and religious wars are crossing borders and collapsing the LIO. Rampant rates of poverty secured by the same financial system they have. Satellite destruction means people are increasingly agitated and revolting against their government. That's Press Gupta. Only our evidence says that you're biased to assume the benefits of sovereignty despite its cascading failures, and that there's an entrenched biased belief that elites propagate that the system will never transmute when technological revolution and the existence of the Westphalia in the 16th century, or the 17th century itself were also seen as impossible at the time, but the desperate attempt to revive it causes extinction of the resilience. There's no warrant for resilience in the 1 year they drop that you're biased in, that finance, which neither of us solve, means that the system is inevitable because if the state has no more regulatory power, space is breaking it down, and there's another stuff assumed. They also dropped that the app is bad for transition because it's a desperate attempt to save the system, which causes more lash out. The inserting stuff is obviously good because it's a moral hazard against garbage, even if it's not, though. It was just an indictment that I gave you context for that says they're just summarizing a position. There's also no external impact to how they solve those environmental effects. They just become siloed and domestic, which is worse. They have also conceded that the state has lost respect with all their 2AC cards went negative because they were recommendations to regain respect. None of that does it. The alternative solves this by doing local stuff, but we don't have to win it because it's all decreasing now. And our framework interpretation says that a lack of IR theories fill up. That's why the permutation isn't solved for all the reasons I did links. Debris. Conceded collisions are inevitable, and SSA sharing makes them more likely. It's a linear straight train. More data means more operators crash stats into each other, respond wrong, deplete fuel in the crowd, high traffic areas, all that causes worse debris. They conceded this turns every advantage because it looks like an ASAT attack when a satellite goes down. Also, they said they can't use the data effectively interpreted to make it work, and that we don't know what the future moves we will do with the data are, which means that all of that stuff's inevitable. There's no Russia war. Both sides, they know, be blown up with the nukes, and neither has an incentive. Putin is focused on domestic stuff, and their card that they strike is insane. Apart from Arbitrov about nukes assumes U.S. airstrikes were basis on an arms race. There's no evidence that to drop them. Lombakis evidence says arms racing is inevitable. Rising expectations doesn't matter if it's on unique because it means relations break down and TCBMs will inevitably fail. Russia proposes deals it knows it can't get on the international stage to look like a global leader. They won't agree and they fight for the details, but it causes boom and bust cycles because future things that Russia expects to get because the U.S. has done a TCBM with them will inevitably collapse our relations in a boom and bust cycle that has been tested, but it has existed for 30 years, which means that there's no way to solve Russian relations through a TCBM.
Together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually already made one. I just need to try some stuff.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
The rogue state / prolif advantage, the debris advantage, the Russia advantage.
Sharing SSA to solve the transnational problem of rogue state attribution without risking a localized politics that leaves us vulnerable to terrorists that cannot end the entrenched Westphalian order is preferable to an entirely localized politics. In short, we have turned all their links. The alternative cannot solve the turns, and we have a DA to the alternative, which is the win condition against this criticism. Now, the prolif advantage proper, they have dropped it. They have conceded that Iran is going to ASAT the United States now, that North Korea as well as Turkey all are developing ASAT capabilities that will destroy space dominance and make conflict inevitable. It escalates because of a lack of proportional response that ensures nuclear conflict. The alternative's localization ensures that these countries just develop their own militaries without any sort of transnational system to regulate them. They've conceded that they're terrorists as well that will develop counter space capabilities, and that the alternative has no way of getting rid of NATO or any sort of military institutions globally, which ensures that there will be retaliation in the world of the alternative. A localized politics means that we have no system of regulation to contain these powers, which means that we have a massive disadvantage to the alternative that escalates to nuclear war. Now, the degree advantage, one, this does not take, their turn does not take out our other advantage. Their argument here is that we can't stop things from colliding, not that we can't determine what collided with what. The premise of our second advantage is that we can now determine what collided with what, which means even if there is a collision, we can attribute it to them and ensure that we have a stable deterrent that stops Iran, North Korea from attacking us because they know they would be retaliated against and they can't mask their ASATs as debris. Two, conjunction warning overload now is our argument. It is non-unique. The whole premise of the affirmative is that we have too much data and we need to sift through it by combining our catalogs and screening for false positives. The one in our red, the 1AC card, is their uniqueness argument, which demonstrates that this is just the same thing. Third, we conceded all the impact defense on this advantage, so there's no way that there is any external impacts. The Russia advantage, one, they cannot go for this argument. The alternative is unconditional. It links to their criticism, which proves that they too have bad scholarship and they should lose under their framework interpretation because they have also used the nation-state framework. Two, it is fundamentally non-unique. We are cooperating with Russia now. Rising expectations are inevitable. We will concede that that means TCBMs fail, but this advantage was not TCBM. We are not going for the TCBMs advantage, so it does not apply. We do a ton of cooperation with Russia on space affairs. We have just appeased them in a bunch of ways, which means they expect more from the United States, and the impact is inevitable. Now, the K at the top, now the K overview. First, their nationalism inevitable arguments will be answered slightly below, but the thesis of our argument is simply that you can use this nation to act internationally from within the nation via vis-a-vis treaties, trade, etc., which is better because not only does it creates that sort of cosmopolitan vision from within the nation, but has a better mechanism to enforce those protections. Turning to a local politics has no way to create enforcement against rogue states, to stop regulation, to create regulated finance, or to enforce environmental protections. They say that we make war inevitable. One, this proves that we turn it because their cards are all critiquing unilateralism. We create a transnational framework of cooperation with Russia to stop rogue powers that are a threat to that international cooperative framework, i.e. Iran and North Korea that want to upend the liberal international system of cooperation. That proves that we turn this link as well. Two, we can stabilize relations even if the condition for war is not eliminated, i.e. we don't go to war with France even though they are a nation, which proves that we can use the nation to create stable relationships or open itself up to hospitality to immigrants. This also answers their imperialism and xenophobia impacts. Now, the K at the top, framework. One, we meet their interpretation was dropped. They have spotted us that the alternative has a link to the plan, so it cannot be a floating pick and cannot result in the plan. And they have spotted us that we get to weigh our case. This proves that, which was their interpretation. This demonstrates that even if they win this framework argument, we have a DA to the alternative that you should vote on. Two, fairness dropped. It must be considered prior because otherwise we would have to defend everything other than the 1AC, and they can focus debate on something small. That is a prior question because debate is a game proven by speech times, etc. They say error replication that assumes the link, so you can't a priori read into all of our evidence. They've also this just really does not matter because we are turning their criticism. We have an alt fails argument, etc. And we are agreeing that they get their K, they just have to prove the gap is bad. 2AC3, dropped. Extinction outweighs. Turns all of their xenophobia, etc. impacts. There's no terminal impact to anything other than a nuclear war, which will kill the most people, which demonstrates that you should care about it more. Now, 2AC6, before I do the permutation, they have conceded that the alternative fails. The 2NSR did not write a single word on it. One, to no blueprint. It's good. They are good on. They are not global, but not what they are instead. Saying that we're all just humans does not produce a vision for international political economy without they don't change the arsenals that are left on high alert, even if they're governed by individuals instead of nation states. Two, rupture does not create the blueprint for them. The idea that the opposition to dominant theorization is the self-sufficient conclusion of politics denies the heavy lifting of designing a new world, i.e. our plan. Their Ginty evidence, which is their only alternative solvency card, claims that challenging the global to turn to the local creates, quote, new agency capable of spreading ideas, and then goes, but our Hahn evidence goes one step further and points out that assuming that the force of critique alone can move movements along, or sweep movements along, is the ivory tower that they have criticized, and is empirically denied by the history and failures of the academic left. Critique, rupture, opening up an opposition to dominance alone is not enough. Three, the alternative does not solve their own links or impacts. Turning to the local is the opposite of regulation. It is deregulation. It is focused on the self and not looking abroad. It can't solve global financial regulation, transboundary environmental crises, and it traps us into the locale, which means that all of their global localized hospitality stuff good is not solved. 4, state is inevitable and localized politics encourage ethno-nationalism. All of their alternative arguments about international system in failing now are citing rise of nationalism globally. Trump, Marie Le Pen, etc. all illustrate that the nation state is gaining popularity, not going away, and their alternative cannot get rid of it. At all. They've also conceded our Roderick as well as our DeBoer evidence that says that the nation state is ingrained. People have an incentive to support it, and they have huge military arsenals, so they can't have some sort of movement against it. Now, the permutation do vote solves the majority of their residual links. We turn their link thesis because we are creating transnational cooperation to attribute attacks to those that are an affront to the transnational system. There, the fact that we use the nation is not enough of a link because our point is that we are using the nation against to create international cooperation. They said that we don't give all others SSA. We don't have to make the world perfect. Just that it is better than the alternative because the alternative cannot sort of spill up in the lingo sense, and we don't need to make the world perfect. It's just better. Now, they simply have no answer to our terrorism impact term to the alternative because the state is, even if there's problems with the sustainability of the state, it is not going away, proven by this, and they have no way, if turning to the local, can attribute attacks to terrorists, which is the thesis of our advantage, causes nuclear war and extinction, which outweighs. Dropped extinction outweighs, dropped alt fails, and proves the perm is the best option. I sent.
Thanks. So I got an email saying that you should send at least one debater from each team to go to. So
Yeah, just that. It's almost like the password.
but can I get the cards? Do you want to